They say time softens everything, but not all doors creak open again with time. Some, you have to walk through while wearing the scars that got you there. My name is Emma Calloway, and there was a time I stood outside a military ceremony, in full dress uniform, holding an invitation with my name on it. But when I got to the door, they told me I wasn't on the list. I didn't argue. I turned around, my heels clicking sharply against the concrete, and walked away as if I hadn't spent years earning the right to be inside that moment. That night, something shifted in me, not rage, not shame, but a silence I carried like armor. That was 10 years ago. Tonight, I stood before a similar set of glass-paneled doors. A different venue, same ceremony type. This time, I wasn't holding an invitation. I didn't need to. My name wasn't missing from the list, it was printed at the top, under bold letters, Guest of Honor, Emma Calloway. A young officer opened the door for me. I walked in, calm, composed. Not triumphant. This wasn't a story about revenge. It's a story about what happens when the quiet one refuses to stay erased. Once upon a time, I served as a major in military intelligence. The work was precise, unglamorous, strategy, terrain modeling, insurgency patterns. I wasn't loud. I wasn't flashy. But I was good. Until one mission unraveled everything. The people who should have stood with me stepped back instead. One of them was my brother. The other, my father. Back then, I lost more than credibility. I lost my place in a family that measured love in promotions and medals. But I didn't chase apologies. I didn't post manifestos. I disappeared and rebuilt myself. Not louder, not softer, just smarter. Years later, they would be in the audience, both of them. And I would walk into that room not as someone they overlooked, but as someone they couldn't dismiss. Not anymore. I took a breath, rolled my shoulders back, and crossed the threshold. The lights inside were warm, but the air felt cool, like justice finally made its way through the vents. Somewhere across the room, I imagined my father adjusting his tie. My brother probably scanning the guest list twice. Let them. Because tonight, I wasn't looking for their recognition. I came for the silence that falls when the room finally has to listen. People assume military households raise disciplined children. That's only half true. They raise survivors of expectation, silence, and rank, expectations that bleed into family photos. My father, Colonel William Calloway, ran our household like it still had guard rotations, wake at 5 a.m., chores in order, no elbows on the table, and above all, no softness. Emotions were indulgent. Mistakes were weaknesses. He wore his medals to church, his judgment like cologne. Then there was my mother, Caroline. A former field nurse with hands steadier than her own heartbeat. She loved us, I think, but it was the kind of love that treated wounds, not prevented them. My older brother, Ben, was the golden one, the future general. He walked early, talked early, and saluted at 3. At his high school graduation, Dad cried when Ben announced he was joining the army. At mine, he shook my hand like a colleague and said, "You'll do fine. Just don't embarrass yourself." I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't loud. I wasn't weak either. But in a house where achievement was currency, I was always in the red. When I earned a full scholarship to a military college, no one threw a dinner. Dad nodded once and said, "Don't expect special treatment." I didn't. I graduated top of my class in strategic intelligence. I wasn't built for the front lines, but I could read a map like it was a heartbeat, decode patterns no one else could see. That didn't impress them. Strategy to my father was only valuable if it came from someone in combat boots. Ben, meanwhile, rose fast. Infantry officer track, medals at every step. Even his mistakes were met with shoulder claps. "He takes initiative," Dad would say. And me? I got silence. Polite praise from colleagues, paper certificates from commanders who knew I held teams together but never made noise about it. Every holiday, I came home. When I came home, it was a shrine to Ben, framed photos. His uniform, a shadow box of ribbons. Not a single picture of me in service. One Thanksgiving, Dad poured drinks and raised a glass to Ben, leading men and making the Callaway name proud. I lifted my water silently. No one noticed. Not even Mom. Eventually, I stopped coming back. I didn't disappear out of spite. I just learned that being unseen in your own family is lonelier than any overseas post. Still, I stayed in the system, kept my head down, quiet excellence, I called it. The kind of work that doesn't win parades but prevents funerals. My evaluations were solid. My teams respected me. But back home, I was still just Emma, the quiet one, the cautionary tale, until the mission. Until the day everything cracked. And the people who taught me loyalty showed me exactly what it wasn't. I remember the heat first, the suffocating dryness that wraps around your face even before you leave the briefing tent. We were stationed near a high-risk zone. I was team lead for a joint recon mission, terrain mapping and intel extraction. Low engagement protocol. My kind of operation, quiet, precise, controlled. Then came the name on the coordination order, Captain Ben Callaway. He wasn't supposed to be there. His unit was stationed 200 miles north. But somehow, he was shuffled in as the liaison. He arrived with his polished swagger and that grin, the one he always wore. "Hey, Major," he said, slapping me on the back. I didn't rise to it. I was already on edge. He knew nothing about the terrain and had barely skimmed the last 6 months of regional patterns. Yet within 48 hours, he was making suggestions. "We should go in early," he said during the third strategy meeting. "Catch them off guard." "No," I replied flatly. "We wait for the satellite pass at 2:40 a.m. That gives us heat maps and overwatch support. Otherwise, we go in blind." He leaned back in his chair and smirked, like I was reciting poetry instead of survival protocols. "Sometimes speed is the advantage, Emma," he said. "We strike before they can scatter. You're not the one walking into the valley." I said. He didn't respond. Just looked amused. The kind of amused that gets people killed. Hours later, I got a quiet push from higher up. "Consider Captain Callaway's timeline." Translation: someone liked what he had to say. Against my gut, against years of training, I signed off on the timeline shift. At 9 p.m., we moved under a moonless sky. Terrain dry and brittle under our boots, I led point. Ice sweeping the ridgeline. 20 minutes in, we hit the first trap. Tripwire. Then the second. And the third. We were bait. Ambushed from both flanks. Pinned for 14 minutes without proper overwatch. I lost Sergeant Lee on sight. Lieutenant Davis bled out during evac. 3 wounded. My comms officer burned his palms trying to fix a malfunctioning uplink that shouldn't have failed. I remember my voice cracking when I called for the medevac. I remember the stillness afterward, the way the sunrise felt like a betrayal. Back at base, I debriefed under strip lights and recording red dots. They asked why I approved the schedule shift. I told the truth. Captain Callaway presented updated risk parameters. I weighed them. "No written order," I added. The silence that followed was long and sharp. Ben never showed for the inquiry. He submitted a 2-paragraph statement about adaptive field conditions. No names. No acknowledgement of the pressure he'd applied. I was handed a formal reprimand: failure to adhere to risk mitigation protocol. Avoidable casualties. Further review pending. My clearance froze. My credibility died. I flew home for 72 hours. Maybe for support. Maybe just to see if they still had space for me. Dad didn't look up when I entered the living room. He was polishing one of Ben's plaques. "You made a bad call," he said. I stared at him. "I didn't make it alone," I said. "You were the lead," he replied. "That's where the responsibility lands." Mom stood behind him, eyes downcast. She didn't say a word. That night, I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, listening to a silence so familiar it nearly felt like comfort. By morning, there was an envelope on the kitchen counter. No note. Just the official invite to Ben's next promotion ceremony, Major Ben Calloway. Time. Location. Dress code. No, we're proud of you. No, are you okay? Just the facts. I didn't burn it. I should have, but something inside me wasn't ready to disappear, not yet. I just needed to remember who I was before they decided who I wasn't. Disgrace doesn't knock, it seeps in, quiet, slow, like water under a locked door. I left the base under the guise of administrative leave, pending further review, but we all knew what it meant. I cleaned out my locker in silence, folded my name patch with careful fingers, and placed it on top of a half-empty duffel bag. No send-off. No salute. Just the sound of boots on linoleum and a door that clicked shut behind me. I moved to a small town outside Carson City. Rented a one-bedroom above a closed-down hardware store. The window stuck in winter. The floor creaked when I turned too sharply. But it was mine. And I disappeared. No uniform. No rank. Just Emma Calloway, woman-shaped ghost. My phone stopped ringing after a week. My inbox dried up. The army had cut ties without saying the words, my family? I blocked every number the moment I unpacked. Not out of hate, but out of necessity. I slept in sweatshirts, drank cold coffee I never finished, and went for long, aimless runs in the dust. Some nights, I heard Sergeant Lee screaming in my dreams. Some nights, I heard my father's voice, you were the lead. That's where the responsibility lands. But the worst was the silence from Ben. Not a single word. No call. No accidental email. He vanished. Just not the way I had. I could have let it rot inside me. I almost did. But something colder than grief grew in that silence. Not revenge. Resolve. I began digging. Military archives are a mess of encryption, code, and level bureaucracy, but I'd spent my life making order from chaos. I knew what patterns to look for. And I still had contacts. Quiet ones. People who remembered. I didn't lose good soldiers lightly. It started with an internal timestamp, satellite pass data. The official logs showed the window had not closed the night of our deployment. In fact, the original 2:40 a.m. timeline remained valid. Which meant the order to shift had no official basis. Then came the messages. A string of internal pings from a secure logistics channel. And there it was, one line from Ben to a regional tech officer, we can't wait for her recon pass. Trust me. If it goes south, I'll take the heat. But he hadn't. He'd let me take it. I didn't go to the press. I wasn't interested in scandal. I compiled everything, satellite logs, comm records, internal routing slips, cross-referenced, annotated, signed with my own ID. Then I packaged the file and uploaded it through a secure portal to the Office of Military Ethics. No cover letter. Just one line in the subject field, truth matters, even when no one's watching. Then I waited. 93 days later, I got a call. A number I didn't recognize. A voice I did. Miss Calloway? The voice asked, and I stiffened. Not Major. Not ma'am. We owe you more than an apology. I didn't speak. We reviewed your file. Your record has been cleared. The reprimand has been rescinded. You're eligible for reinstatement. I should have felt something. Relief, maybe. Vindication. But all I felt was stillness. I didn't want reinstatement. I wanted my name back. Not in their mouths, but in my own memory. The invitation came in an encrypted envelope. No paper this time, just a sleek, official-looking email from the Defense Strategy Analysis Center, DSAC. They were hosting a closed-door anniversary event in D.C. for senior strategic personnel and select civilian command advisors. I hadn't attended anything like that in years, but there it was, my name, right beneath the header, keynote address, Emma Calloway, not an afterthought. Not a plus one. I was the one expected to speak. I clicked the attachment, scanned the logistics, and then I saw them. 2 names listed under confirmed attendees, Ben Calloway. William Calloway. My brother. My father. It hit harder than I wanted it to. All those years of silence. And now, we'd be breathing the same filtered air again. I stared at the screen for a long time, then shut my laptop. I wasn't going for them, but I wasn't avoiding them either. The event was held at the Grand Atrium, a repurposed military armory turned polished think tank venue. Modern lighting, glass walls, honor banners. I arrived early, I always did. The entrance staff stood at attention as I approached. A young officer with sharp creases in her uniform checked her tablet. Name, ma'am? She asked. Emma Calloway, I replied. She flicked across the screen, then widened her eyes. She stepped back. You're on the list, she said, almost startled. I nodded, as it should be. She guided me through security, then down a hallway to the VIP waiting room. Soft chairs, quiet lighting. A tea service had been arranged on a low table. There it was, peppermint tea. My father once scoffed at it, called it a civilian drink. I poured a cup, sat, and waited. The door cracked open once, an aide bringing in a packet for my remarks. He addressed me as ma'am 3 times before leaving again. I could hear the room next door starting to fill, glasses clinking, laughter rising in crescendos. A voice here or there I half recognized. I stood, adjusted my jacket, ran a hand across my ribbons, then looked at my own reflection in the narrow wall mirror. Not the girl they once overlooked. Not the woman they erased. Someone who had nothing left to prove and everything left to say. The ballroom lights dimmed, and a soft hush settled over the room. Then, my name rang out across the speaker system, clear, direct, undeniable. Please welcome our keynote speaker. Emma Calloway. I stood, took the steps slowly. The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was measured. The kind that says, we know who you are now. I reached the podium, adjusted the mic, and the lights warmed my face. But my hands didn't shake. In the crowd, I spotted them, Ben, stiff in his tailored suit. My father, arms crossed, jaw clenched. My mother wasn't there. I hadn't expected her to be. I didn't look away. I wasn't supposed to be here. I began, years ago. I stood outside a different event, like this. Same type of room, same type of people. Invitation in hand. But I wasn't allowed in. My name wasn't on the list. A pause. No one dared shift in their seat that day. I walked away, not just from a building, but from a family. From people who knew how to speak loud but never how to listen. I scanned the crowd again, met Ben's eyes. He didn't blink, but I didn't walk away from myself. I leaned slightly forward, the microphone amplifying my quiet resolve. I rebuilt. Quietly. Without applause. Without recognition. And when the truth finally returned, I didn't demand revenge. I claimed something more powerful. I lifted the speech packet from the podium and folded it once before setting it aside. I don't need redemption, I said softly. I don't need permission. I paused, letting the silence stretch for just a moment. I am here because silence didn't erase me. It only sharpened my voice. I took a step back from the podium, not waiting for applause. I didn't linger long after the applause faded either. There were handshakes, measured, respectful, some hesitant. One man, I barely remembered from a joint op years ago, clasped my hand and said, "We should have seen you sooner," but I kept my eyes on the far end of the ballroom. That's where they were. My father, William Calloway, still holding himself like he wore the uniform, though his medals hadn't caught real light in years. And Ben, jaw tight, expression unreadable but no longer confident. They didn't approach me. I didn't expect them to. Instead, I walked out into the hallway where the air was cooler. The lighting softer, and the silence easier to stand inside. On the service table, a pot of peppermint tea still waited. I poured a cup, sat, and waited for nothing. The peppermint was warm, centering me. My father once laughed when I ordered it at a diner, called it a civilian drink. But the quiet strength in it had always steadied me. They found me there minutes later, not together, but close. Ben spoke first, the edge of his voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "You didn't tell us you'd be here. Or that you were speaking," he said. His voice was softer than I remembered, less certain. I didn't smile. "You didn't ask where I'd gone," I replied, calmly, my voice carrying a weight I hadn't meant to give it. He nodded slowly. "Still, that was a lot." "It was enough," I said. "That's the difference." My father stepped forward, his voice slower than I remembered. "You've said your piece." "No," I replied, my words cutting through the air. "I claimed my space. Finally." Without needing permission, his gaze held mine for the first time in years. There was no weight behind it, just age, years of silence and unspoken things. "You always made things harder than they had to be," he said, shaking his head slightly. I stared at him, the silence between us thick and heavy. "I didn't make them hard. You made them quiet," I said, my voice steady but firm. And I filled that silence with someone else's voice. He didn't respond. Maybe he couldn't. "I don't hate you," I said, surprising myself. But I stopped needing to be seen by people who only looked when I failed. We stood there, the three of us, like strangers who once shared a house. Then I turned, walking away from them. Outside, the cold air stung my face, but I welcomed it. The city stretched out beneath the sky, glowing faintly, rooftop lights like medals no one had to earn through someone else's story. Some people fight for decades to be allowed inside. But I wasn't fighting anymore. As I walked, the weight of years seemed to lift. Not because I'd won, not because I'd had the last word, but because for the first time I had found peace in the silence. And that was enough. The next morning, I woke to the soft sound of the wind rustling through the trees outside my small apartment. The world felt quieter, somehow, like it had been waiting for me to take this step. For years, I'd stayed hidden, waiting for permission, waiting for acknowledgement. But that night, I had stepped forward, not asking for anyone's approval, not seeking validation from the people who should have stood by me. I had rebuilt my life in the quiet spaces where no one could hear me. And now, I stood in the light, not because I needed it, but because I had earned it. The phone call came later that afternoon. I had been expecting it, though I didn't know when. The voice on the other end was familiar, Colonel Owens, now retired. He had been my division commander, the kind of man who used to pace behind rookies until they learned how to breathe with discipline. "Miss Calloway," he said, his voice warm but businesslike. "We've reviewed your file. Everything has been cleared. You've been reinstated." I felt nothing in response. Not relief. Not excitement. Just stillness. "I don't want reinstatement," I said quietly. "I've moved on from that part of my life." Colonel Owens didn't argue. He understood. "We owe you an apology, Emma. Not just for the reprimand, but for the silence we put you through." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The apology wasn't what I'd been waiting for. I had already claimed my space. That evening, I sat on the small balcony of my apartment, looking out at the horizon. The city below me hummed with the sounds of life, but it didn't feel like I had to fight for a place in it anymore. I had earned my place. Quietly, steadily. And no one could take that from me. As the sun dipped below the skyline, I sipped my peppermint tea. It was warm, comforting, and for the first time in a long while, it tasted like victory. The days that followed felt different. Not because things had changed overnight, but because I had. For the first time, I wasn't looking back. Wasn't waiting for someone to see me, to acknowledge me. I had moved forward, not for approval, but for myself. And that made all the difference. I continued working from my quiet little apartment in Carson City, far from the noise of military ranks and expectations. The phone calls were still few and far between. I kept a low profile, not by choice, but because it was how I'd learned to survive. I wasn't interested in fame or fortune. I had done my time, earned my stripes, and now it was just about living my life without the shadows of expectations hanging over me. But the call came one morning, a week after the event at the Grand Atrium, when I least expected it. "Emma," the voice on the other end said. "There's someone here to see you." I wasn't sure how to respond. The voice sounded familiar, but it took me a moment to place it. "Who is this?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. "It's Colonel Owens," the voice replied. "I know you've moved on, but I need to talk to you. There's something important you need to know." I didn't ask why or what he wanted to say. I didn't need to. I had no interest in returning to the world that had tried so hard to erase me. But something in the way he spoke made me pause. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said, hanging up without another word. When I arrived at the military base, the familiar scent of old coffee and stale air hit me the moment I walked through the door. It felt like stepping into a ghost of my former life, a place that was mine, yet no longer. I hadn't realized how much I'd left behind until now. Colonel Owens was standing by the window, staring out at the training fields beyond the glass. When he heard me approach, he turned slowly. "Emma," he said, his voice softer than before. "I owe you more than an apology." I didn't respond. He didn't expect me to. He motioned for me to sit across from him. "What happened to you?" It wasn't just about one mission. It was the culmination of everything that had been wrong from the start. "We failed you, Emma. Your work, your loyalty, your intelligence, it all got overlooked because of who you were. Because you were never the loud one." I felt a flicker of something in my chest: anger, frustration, relief? I wasn't sure. I had spent so many years in the silence, not asking for recognition, that to hear someone finally say it aloud was jarring. "I never wanted to be loud," I said quietly, looking him in the eye. "I just wanted to do my job." But when that wasn't enough, I learned to be invisible. He nodded, the weight of years of regret in his eyes. "And I learned too late how much we failed you." He paused, gathering his thoughts, and then said something that shocked me. "You've been cleared of everything. The reprimand. The file is wiped. You're no longer on administrative leave. Emma. You're eligible for reinstatement. But I'm not here to ask you to come back. I'm here because I need to give you something that should have been yours a long time ago." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. It was official looking, stamped with the same insignia I had seen countless times before. My name was written across the front. I took the envelope, my hand slightly shaking as I held it. My first instinct was to tear it open right there, but something inside me told me to wait. To breathe. To remember the silence that had always been there and find the strength in it. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a small certificate. At first glance, it looked like a standard commendation, but as I read the words on the paper, my heart skipped a beat. It was a citation. For my work. For the mission that had almost cost me everything. For the soldiers I had saved, even if no one else had known it. It wasn't just a recognition. It was acknowledgement, a real one that didn't come with strings attached or expectations to follow. It wasn't from my family, or from Ben, or from anyone who had ever thought I was too quiet, too overlooked. This was from the people who truly understood what I had done, and they finally saw it. "Your work," Colonel Owens said quietly, "was invaluable, Emma. You earned this years ago. And it's time someone finally told you that." I folded the certificate carefully, tucking it into the pocket of my jacket. "I didn't need this," I said, my voice steady, but the words carrying more weight than I intended. "But I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming." He nodded, his expression softening. "You deserve more than just this, Emma. You always have." I didn't know what to say. All I could do was nod in acknowledgement, letting the weight of his words settle over me. We sat there for a long while, the silence between us not uncomfortable, but reflective. Neither of us had the words to fix the past, but in this moment, perhaps we didn't need to. When I left the base, I didn't feel lighter, and I didn't feel burdened. I just felt at peace. I had made my peace with the silence, with the years I'd spent being overlooked, being erased, being silent, and now, I was finally ready to move forward without looking back. As I drove back to my apartment, the city spread out before me like a map I had long since learned to read. It wasn't the loudest or the brightest place, but it was mine. I had earned my space here, not through recognition, but through survival. Through the quiet strength of simply showing up. The sun was beginning to set as I parked, the soft orange glow filling the sky. I sat there for a moment, just watching it. No longer fighting for anything. No longer needing to prove anything. Just Emma. Finally at peace. The days following my meeting with Colonel Owens were a mixture of reflection and quiet acceptance. After years of striving for recognition, I realized that my worth didn't hinge on the approval of others, especially not my family or the military system that had so long overlooked me. The recognition in the form of a certificate, while appreciated, wasn't the closure I needed. It was simply the final symbol of everything I had learned over the years. What I had earned wasn't an award, but the quiet strength to live life on my own terms. For years, I had struggled with the idea that I wasn't enough, that I needed someone to see me, to validate the work I'd done, the sacrifices I'd made. I sought acknowledgement from people who only looked at me when they needed something. I wanted to be more than a shadow in my own life, but what I had missed was that the loudest voice in the room isn't always the one that matters. It's the one that persists in the silence, and that silence? It turned out to be my greatest ally. For so long, I had feared it. I thought it was a sign of invisibility, of being overlooked, of being forgotten. But silence, I learned, doesn't erase you, it refines you. In the quiet moments, when no one is watching, that's where the real work happens. It's where we find our true selves, without the distractions or demands of others. When I stood before the audience at the Grand Atrium, delivering my keynote speech, I realized that the applause didn't matter. It wasn't about showing off. It wasn't about revenge or redemption. It was about owning my space in the world, not because I had been given permission, but because I had claimed it. I didn't need validation from my father or my brother anymore. I didn't need the recognition from the army. I had built my life, step by step, on my own terms, and as I walked away from the podium, I knew that the silence I had once feared was now my greatest strength. It wasn't about making a statement, it was about knowing that I had nothing left to prove. I had already won. As I sipped my peppermint tea that night, the same drink my father had once mocked, I reflected on how far I had come. The world hadn't changed, but I had. I had stopped waiting for permission, stopped asking to be seen, and instead, I focused on what I could control, my own actions, my own choices. In that stillness, I found peace, but here's the part one wants you to understand. This story isn't just about me, it's about all of us. We've all experienced moments where we felt invisible, overlooked, or dismissed. We've all had those times when we thought we weren't enough, when we were told we didn't belong. But the truth is, no one can decide your worth except for you. No one can define your place in this world except you. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeking validation from others. We all do it at some point. We want to be recognized for our hard work, our accomplishments, our sacrifices. And that's normal. But what if I told you that the key to real peace, real success, is not waiting for someone to hand you that validation? What if I told you that you already have everything you need to create the life you want, to claim your space in the world, and to stop asking for permission? That's what I want you to take away from this story. You are enough. Your worth isn't defined by anyone else's opinion of you. It isn't defined by your job title, your achievements, or how loud you are in a room. It's defined by who you are and the choices you make, so I'm asking you, right now, to stop waiting. Stop waiting for someone to tell you that you belong. Stop waiting for an apology. Stop waiting for someone to see your value. Instead, claim your space. Quietly, confidently, and without asking for permission. The world doesn't owe you recognition. You owe it to yourself to live your life fully, on your terms. The first step is embracing the silence. It's easy to feel like silence is a void, an emptiness. But the truth is, silence is where growth happens. Silence is where we find our strength, our courage, and our resolve. In the noise of the world, it's easy to get lost. But in the quiet moments, we discover who we really are. We find the clarity we need to move forward, to make the right decisions, and to create a life that reflects our true selves. So how do you start? Embrace the silence, don't be afraid of it. In the silence, you can hear your inner voice. You can reflect on your goals, your values, and your purpose. Don't rush to fill the quiet with distractions. Instead, let it become a space for you to reconnect with yourself. Stop seeking validation from others. It's easy to fall into the trap of wanting others to notice us, to acknowledge our worth. But waiting for validation is like waiting for permission to live your life. Instead, take ownership of your achievements, your journey, and your self-worth. You don't need anyone else to tell you that you are enough. Build quiet excellence. It's not about being the loudest in the room. It's about doing the work. Focus on your goals, and let your actions speak louder than your words. Excellence doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It's the quiet, consistent effort that creates lasting results. Own your story. We all have a story to tell, but sometimes, we let others define it for us. Take control of your narrative. Don't let others' opinions shape your story. You get to decide who you are, what you stand for, and how you want to be remembered. Your story is yours to tell, and it's time you started telling it on your terms. Learn from the silence. There will be times when you feel overlooked or unheard. Use those moments to reflect and learn. Don't let the silence make you feel small. Let it empower you to grow, to learn, and to become the person you're meant to be. The quietest moments often hold the most power. Be patient with yourself. Growth takes time. You won't change overnight, and that's okay. Embrace the process, even when it feels slow or difficult. Trust that every step you take, no matter how small, is bringing you closer to the life you want. Now, I want to leave you with this thought: don't wait for someone to tell you that you're enough. You are. And when you stop seeking validation from others and start validating yourself, you'll realize that you have everything you need to create the life you want. The world may not always recognize you, but that doesn't diminish your value. Your worth is inherent, and it's time you start living like it. So, I'm calling on you today: claim your space. No more waiting. No more asking for permission. Take what is rightfully yours, and build the life you've always deserved. And when the world tries to ignore you, when they don't give you the recognition you deserve, keep moving forward. Let your quiet confidence speak for itself. Because, in the end, it's not about what they see. It's about what you know. It's your life. Own it. To everyone watching, I encourage you to reflect on your own journey. Take a moment to evaluate where you've been seeking validation and where you've been letting silence control you. Commit today to stepping into your own power, claiming your space, and owning your story. Remember, you don't need anyone's permission to be great. Now, go ahead and share this message. Tell someone who needs to hear it. Because when one of us steps into our power, it gives permission for others to do the same. Let's start a movement of quiet strength. Let's claim the silence. Let's own our voices. Together, we can redefine what it means to truly be seen, not by the world, but by ourselves. Take action now. Your time is now.